Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dating a single parent, key things to consider. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing dating a single parent, key things to consider. So if you're entering the dating world, you may be wondering whether or not you should consider dating a single parent. In today's podcast, I'm discussing 3 points to consider when dating a single parent. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is you will never come first. Now this might sound obvious, but it's important to get your mindset around the fact that you will never come first. Now ordinarily when two people get together, if there are no children involved at this time, they will put each other first as soon as the relationship starts to develop, grow and blossom. But in a situation when you're dating a single parent, you need to recognise this moment will never come. You will never be their number one. Now this might sound bad at this stage, but there are some pluses for you to put into the melting pot of your mind as well. And that is the fact that your date is going to want to have one-on-one time with their child. Maybe it's, of course, by necessity, but also it could be, of course, by choice. Either way, there's going to be times where they're not going to want you to be involved, especially early on in your connection. Now, the plus side of this is that you're very unlikely to be rushed into a connection. Maybe you're coming out of a breakup. Maybe you're somebody who isn't too keen on getting serious straight away. Well, if you're dating a single parent, the likelihood is you will have more of that freedom. And the reason for that is that most single parents won't want you around all of the time. Like I said, especially at first, this is unlikely to be the case. So maybe if you were to date somebody who didn't have children, they possibly could be someone who wants to get serious very, very quickly. Well, if you're dating a single parent, this isn't necessarily or even likely to be the case. And therefore, if you want to take things at a slower pace before you jump into something very, very serious, then this might be something that actually benefits you. You are likely to have more time to yourself. You're likely to have more opportunity to do things you want to do, spending time with people you want to spend time with, i.e. your friends, your family, maybe you have hobbies, maybe you have work commitments, which other potential dates might frown upon for whatever reason, but you might have more opportunity to do these things because the person you're dating wants to spend time with their child. Now, if you're the type of person who wants to get serious very, very quickly, then this is not likely to be the case with somebody who is a single parent. So again, you need to really consider the situation at hand. Now, depending on how the single parent has arranged their childcare, they might be the person who lives with their child most of the time, if not all of the time, or perhaps they are the person who sees their child every so often. Maybe it's every weekend, maybe it's every other weekend, or whatever pattern that has been discussed. Again, this is going to change things dramatically for you. Let's say, for instance, your only days off each week are the weekend. You're off Saturday and Sunday, but the person that you're dating is a single parent and they only get to see their child or children every weekend, every Saturday and Sunday. As you can see here, it's very unlikely you're going to have the available time for one another to date and get to know each other. Now, if you did get serious in the future, if you lived together one day, then this wouldn't necessarily be a problem. I mean, of course, by then you would have been introduced to the child. But when we're thinking of the beginning of a new connection, this is not likely to be the case, not for a while. So you need to consider, does your lifestyle actually match the lifestyle of a single parent? Do they have their children all of the time? Are they somebody who only sees their children once every so often? It can make a huge difference. Also, despite me saying that people might not want to involve you in this new family, so to speak, very, very soon, you are sometimes going to get individuals who do want to take things quickly. Maybe they live with their children 24/7. Maybe their child doesn't see their other parent. Perhaps they want to introduce you much quicker than you would actually like because they don't have the available time to date unless you are around their child and it's an activity that you can all do together. Now, maybe this is something that works for you, but I would suggest a lot of you would listen to this and not be overly keen, especially initially when you don't really know the child. You don't want to be getting to know the child at the same time as you're getting to know the parent. You want to be getting to know your date first, recognizing this is somebody you want to be with before that happens. So these dynamics can't be fully predicted. I would say, generally speaking, this new date of yours, the single parent, is going to want to keep you and the child separate for now, but maybe that's not possible due to the scheduling of the childcare. You need to be paying attention to these thoughts, and if you don't know any of these things yet, and you're just dipping your toe into the dating world, it's something to try and understand ASAP if you realise that you're dating someone who has children. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is their ex will likely be around. Now, in most instances, when you're dating a single parent, their ex will be somewhat around. And this is because, in most instances, they would want to be involved in the child's life. As I said earlier, they might actually be the one living with the child predominantly, and your new date might be the person who only sees the children once every week, once every few weeks. But if you're in a scenario where your date is the one living with the children or the child, then you have to consider that their former partner is likely to be someone who is involved from time to time. So whether or not this ex lives with a child or whether or not they're the one picking the child up and bringing them back, you've got to realise that in most instances a single parent is going to have their ex connected to them forevermore, certainly until the child is 18 or so. Now, how does this affect you? Some people are absolutely fine with it, others are not so keen. You need to feel confident in your connection to get through the fact that they're probably going to be communicating with their ex very frequently, certainly every week, if not even daily. Whenever there's a situation with a child involved, you're going to have to realise that your date and their ex will be speaking, they will be seeing each other. This is a scenario which isn't going to go away anytime soon. Now, you might find this absolutely understandable and fine, or you might realise quite quickly this is uncomfortable to you, where you are relaxing with your new date watching TV, they receive a text, and you realise it's from their ex. You need to realise this comes with the territory. If you're dating a single parent, this is likely to happen. Now, occasionally, the other parent won't be someone who is communicating. Maybe there has been a temporary disappearance from this person. Maybe communication is really broke down. Or perhaps there's somebody very far away or not involved in the child's life at all. Maybe they are no longer somebody who is even with us right now, if you understand what I'm trying to say. Every dynamic is going to be different, but I would say most of the time an ex is going to be in the picture. Even if they're not right now, they might appear in it. Maybe you were told that your date hasn't heard from their ex in a very long time, and then out of nowhere they reappear and they want to be part of their child's life. You have to realise this is a possibility most of the time. So you've got to prepare yourself. You've got to think, is this something I can deal with? Is this something I can cope with? Because if it's not, if you're somebody who is jealous, if you're somebody who is anxious, you've really got to think whether or not this is something that you can cope with and whether you feel that this is a relationship dynamic that works for you. I'm suggesting that most of you will have these challenges if you go down this route. If you go down the path of dating a single parent, most of you are going to encounter the ex. There will come a stage where you likely meet the ex. There will come a stage where you probably all have to be speaking together in the same room, attending the same event as the child. How you deal with this is up to you, but what I can say is that if you behave in a negative way, if you seem frustrated, bitter, angry, jealous, it's not going to help your new relationship. So either you can handle it or you can't. You can't try and get by but being angry and frustrated, because if you decide to take on board this situation, you've got to recognize this is the parameter. This is how it is. This is the world now as you see it. The X, most of the time, is going to be involved until the child is certainly an adult, certainly 18 or over, if not beyond that point. And therefore, it's only up to you whether you believe this is something which could work for you. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and navigate the dating world and all of the complexities that can come around with it, then please consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about dating a single parent, key things to consider. And point number 3 is step parenting is different to parenting. So let's just say you get together with this new person you're dating, things start to become more serious, and you become more ingrained in their child's life. Perhaps you're actually known as a stepmom or a stepdad. Maybe you have that type of title now because your connection has grown so strong. What you need to understand and realize is that step parenting is different to parenting. Now, of course, every specific dynamic is going to be slightly different, but most of the time, the parent of the child, your date, is not going to want you to speak to that child as if you are their actual parent. Now, this isn't always the case, but most of the time, this is what you'll likely see. What this often causes challenges with is discipline. What can you say to a child? What are you allowed to say? What aren't you allowed to say? Only you and your new partner can discuss this dynamic, but you need to realize that, say, for instance, the child does something that you want to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You need to recognize how your new partner would feel if you said such. Now, obviously, and I would say in most instances, if there is something dangerous or really silly or stupid about to happen, presumably they would be okay with it. But when it's regarding other elements which might not be as serious, but things that you are not particularly keen on, maybe you want to pull up this new child on, you have to understand that your date, your new partner, might not feel the same as you. They might not feel that this is something that they want you to be telling their child off about. And maybe during a heated discussion, they might even bring up the fact that you're not their parent. They might not mean that in a derogatory way, but it's something they might use if they feel that you're overstepping the mark. Now, you might listen to this and think, well, if I'm going to be involved in this family unit, I want to be the mom, I want to be the dad, I want to be the person who is able to speak to a child, educate the child, discipline the child if necessary. You might feel that that is your role. Well, only you and your new partner can really discuss this and understand what those boundaries are. Again, this is another complexity of dating a single parent. It's not the same as having your own child. When you have a child together with someone, yes, of course, there's going to be discussions on what you want to be the rules, you might say, and what you want to be the standards and things that you're going to be bringing up a child with. However, you will feel more able to get across your own point of view and your own ideals of how you would like to raise that child. But when it's not yours, you've got to recognize that your partner and their ex may have things almost set in stone in how they want to raise their kid. And if you decide you want to go completely against that, you run the risk of ruining your relationship. Now, I'm only telling you this now so that if you decide to get into a new relationship with a single parent, you can understand what is probably ahead of you. This isn't always the case. Some connections run smoother than others. Sometimes the parent of a child will be more than happy than you to make suggestions and bring up your own ideas and to say what you need to say at the time. However, some parents of children do not want a new date or new partner to do so. It's always vital that you communicate effectively in relationships, but even more so when there is a single parent involved, because you might not know what their boundaries are. You need to know theirs, they need to understand what yours are, and you need to see whether this connection can actually work. sometimes they can flourish. Sometimes there can be families which grow with a new person involved, and then maybe further children are added to the family. Maybe you get together, there's a child from a previous relationship, and then a few years down the line you have your own children, and everybody lives happily ever after. That can happen. But also, sadly, there can be a lot of difficulties and challenges from what some people refer to as blended families. I'm not sure if I really like that terminology per se, but that is what some people refer to them as. If we look at relationships with people who already have children, this can sometimes be a very difficult position for the person coming into the connection. So please consider whether or not it's right for you, and whether or not you want to embark on such a relationship. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.